Also, there's like coffee coat on my tongue. Hold on. And this is why you don't drink coffee with oil in it, like right before you're
Oh
doing
my
something.
God.
It's so good. Hey, I'm Maxie McCoy, and this is Never Been Asked, where I invite my guests to break out of whatever box they've been put in. And today I'm talking to chronic illness advocate Nitika Chopra, whose own health journey led her to build the first platform celebrating those living with chronic illness. Nitika, welcome.
Hi, it's so good to be
Hi.
here with you.
Girl, I'm so happy you're here. And I know that most of your interviews, because I've listened to a number of them, they start out with your own diagnosis, what you've described as a debilitating case of psoriasis at the age of 10, and then the arthritis related to that took over most of your body at 19. And you know that I want to know a lot more about that. And I know that we're going to get there. But first, I want to know, what is the thing that you've never been asked?
I mean, I think really like we talk a lot about my health and my journey and how challenging it has been, which it
Yeah.
has. But I think the thing that people don't necessarily want to always ask me is like, what are the gifts that have come out of the journey? And although I talk about thriving, it's usually from the lens of like, okay, this really sucks and is super hard. So how can we get to the other side of it? But there's been a lot of gems and like really powerful things that having such an incredibly challenging health journey has given me.
Did
So
you
yeah.
know that those gems were gems when, and obviously it's ongoing, right? This isn't something that has an end point, but did it take a certain amount of years for that to become a gem to you? Was it a gem immediately? I'm wondering for the person that's listening to you and being like, there are no gems in this.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why it's hard to talk about that part because, there are so many people struggling with their health. And so to sort of seem like you're almost minimizing it by being like, well, there's a silver lining in everything, or like, look at the, light in between the darkness. I don't know, all that stuff, all
Yeah,
that
the
toxic
tropes.
positivity stuff, right? I don't have a desire to do that. You don't want anyone to ever feel like they're failing because they're not able to find the gems. So I totally want to name that. Thank you for bringing that up. No, I did not think that they were gems when they were happening. I was like, especially because I was first diagnosed with psoriasis at the age of 10, and it became my identity. It was something that really defined me for a really long time. And it sort of became, yeah, it was my greatest wound,
Yeah.
and then it was like my greatest wound that everyone could see all over me all the time, every day.
Can you explain for someone who is
Yeah.
not living with psoriasis every day for many, many decades, if they're like not many, many decades, that's just
Yeah,
like,
no, it's been 3 decades.
okay, well, then 3 decades, but that's not many, many, that's just three. But for someone who's not dealing with the day to day of that, can you explain what that experience is like?
Yeah. I mean, so psoriasis is an autoimmune disease and it's a skin condition. And essentially, what it looks like is your skin cells are regenerating at like a rapid rate. So you actually have sort of like scaly, flaky skin on top of your regular skin, right?
Okay.
And so what happens with that condition is that it itches like chicken pox. When you scratch it, it bleeds, it flakes. It is so aggressive. And for some people, they just have it on like maybe their scalp or their elbow or a small portion of their body, which even that is really hard. So, like, definitely not minimizing that. If you have it at all, it's really challenging. But I had it covering 98% of my body.
Oh,
So, like, for
Nitika.
17 years.
Oh,
So it was debilitating, which is why I use that word. It was debilitating emotionally, physically, spiritually. It affected it and impacted every single aspect of my day, of my life. And so yeah, so that experience was just, it was something that sometimes now I'm 39, and I'm just like sometimes I look back and I can't even believe that I went through all of that. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, right? When you get to the other side of something, you're just like,
Whoa.
if I had to do that same thing today, I would be kicking and screaming and just like
Mhm,
not wanting to do it.
mhm.
But yeah, it's remarkable the things that, that we all go through sometimes. So yeah.
What were the gems? So, on one hand, you would go through it kicking and screaming. Would you go through it again to learn what you've learned?
Yes.
Mm.
Which is the crazy thing.
Isn't that wild?
That's something no one ever asks me. So yeah, I would go through it again, actually. I haven't thought about that. I don't think, and at least not in a long time. But yeah, I would because I'm really proud of the woman that I am, just like as a human being, right? Like I know that the probably biggest spiritual lesson that I was taught when I was going through all of that, which I didn't understand at the time, was this almost out of body experience where I would be meeting people and going through my life. And I could see that people saw me as my illness. They
Mm.
saw that's all they saw of me, right? So they would see this young Indian girl covered in scales,
Yeah.
and that's all they saw. And and it wasn't even that they were being negative, like it's not even to their detriment or to fault them, right? It's like I get it. I get it. I really get it. And I would be having this experience inside of my body, inside of myself where I was like, wait, but that's not who I am. Like that's what my skin looks like and that's like a thing I have to deal with, but that's not who I am. And so I over the years I started to really sort of process that with
Mm.
other people like, oh wait, I'm seeing her and she looks like this and then it would sort of connect in my head like, oh, but that's just what she looks like. That's not who she is, right? But it was this slow process. It was not like an immediate thing for me, but it changed
Mhm.
who I am as a person.
Yeah, just the
I
ability to know that you're doing that and that you're being seen like that. Even listening to you talk, Netica, I was thinking I just had kind of flashbacks to my elementary school and the various kids that clearly as an adult I know were dealing with either a chronic illness or a chronic mental health illness. And I'm not even sure what their names are. Like I have them in whatever that boxes as a child and the ways that we still do that. How did you get yourself out of putting other people into those boxes? Was there anything that you did?
Mm, you ask such great questions. I mean, I should not be surprised, but I'm loving this conversation. Okay. So, side note,
Makes me
everybody.
really happy to hear. I'm not gonna lie.
Really? Yeah. Side note, giving you praise where it's due. I think it's something that I still do to this day, which is I tend to go deep like pretty quickly. And it is because I take in the person, that's in front of me on a physical level, but I know that that's not who they are. So, like, pretty quickly, and sometimes it scares people. I'm not gonna lie, but I've learned that it's a huge part of who I am, and so for the right people,
Yeah.
they will want more of that, and they'll want to connect with that. And it's not right for everyone because we're built, especially in America. For those of you who are watching in America, we're built to really be on the surface, to not face our pain, to not go into the wounds and all of that. And that's also been a journey for me in and of itself of just like owning that I'm the person that goes straight into the wound and wants to like get in there and like clean it up
Clean
and
it
talk
out.
about it. Yeah. And like talk about it and like smell it and touch it and, feel it. And just that's just who I am because I lived in my wound for
Yeah.
17 years
Like
straight.
truly, literally, physically living in a wound. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that that's something that people don't, and I'll go back to your original question in a second, but I think that's something people don't always honor
Mhm.
about those living with a chronic illness or just with trauma, right? Because chronic illness is one type of trauma for the body. People are going through so many different types of traumas, right? Whether it's the loss of a parent at a young age or a sibling or, something or a divorce or, a devastating a situation in your job. Like there's so much trauma that often is just not being talked about. And so yeah, so back to your original question about what did I do? I think that's just it, just going deep and like not and holding myself, I guess, to the standard that I wished people would have held me to, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
or who would that they would have treated me in that way. And knowing how much that would have made an impact on me, especially as a young girl. If I had had more people around me, whether it was in school or in my family, that could see me,
Hmm.
but no
Hmm.
one saw me growing up. Like everyone really just saw this sick girl. So it took me a long time to create my own identity outside of all of that.
As you're talking, I'm remembering hearing you say something about how a lot of times the cultural systems that we are in or the family systems can keep us in that wound or the wound of your illness. What did that look like for you growing up as you're talking about being a young girl that was kind of like only seen as someone with this debilitating psoriasis? How did the family and the cultural systems play into that?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, but I would say probably the way that stands out the most, in my mom's side of the family, there's a few of us, quite a few of us, that have autoimmune diseases. We have all different types of autoimmune diseases, but my grandmother, my mother, one of my cousins, some very serious and, some a little bit more mild. And I would say that I was the first person, and I'm the youngest person out of that list, um, that questioned it, right? I
Mm,
was the first person to be like, I'm sorry, what? Do you know that like autoimmune is basically our bodies attacking ourselves? And do you know that our family, because I'm from an Indian family, is steeped in patriarchy that like suppresses women? My
right.
mom was
Right.
like, Nitika, what are you talking about? I don't know, like ruffling everyone's feathers from like the moment I was born,
Yeah.
basically. My mom has been calling me a pataki since I was 2 years old, which means firecracker. So it's just who I am.
Also true.
Yeah. So true. And most of my good girlfriends are all patakis, by the way, because
Yeah.
we like take over the world and we're just like, yeah, this is who we are. Um,
Not stopping.
yeah, cannot stop.
Can't.
But I would say, that it played a huge role in just like continuously wanting to suppress
Yeah.
my fiery, inquisitive, I believe we can have better sort of mentality, which is a very American
Mhm.
mentality. It is, I'm first generation, my parents immigrated here from India. So like it is it's very much a privilege that I can even ask these questions and have
Yeah.
these conversations. So I understand that. But those are some of the ways that, my family system just really perpetuated it and also just weren't really open to the different ways in which we can evolve past it
Mhm.
and all of that. And I think also there's also like a bigger conversation about beauty and what it means to be beautiful and needing to fit a very specific size, mold, look, all of these things in order to have value. And that is very much perpetuated, especially in Indian households. But I think many cultures can relate to that. And so, yeah, so there's like all of that too, right?
So
Yeah.
so many layers, but even as you're talking about, the conversation around beauty, and you then match that with a chronic illness that is physically showing, which, as we know, not all of them are. What was your journey like with the relationship to feeling beautiful, feeling sexy, feeling in your female power, all of these things as it related to what was showing up on your skin? Because I imagine there's a lot of people going through that, whether they're losing their hair, pulling hair out, have skin issues, have, physical disabilities, where, we don't see the things that tell us that is part of us and we can still be beautiful with that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's been such a multi-layered journey. Now I can sit here and be really empowered and own my beauty, whatever that is that day, right? But that was not the way that I felt for most of my life.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's really important to name for those people that you just mentioned that might be going through that exact thing right now. For me, it was really a matter of part of it was spiritual beauty, to be honest with you. Because going back to the first thing that I had said, if I always looked that way, if I was sitting here in front of you covered in psoriasis, I still need to know that I am beautiful in the divine sense of the word, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is beauty, and beauty to me is really when we reflect back each other's light,
Yeah.
when we honor each other, when we are in community, when we are
Mm-hmm.
connected, when we are coming from our heart. To me, that is the most beautiful thing. I think that's why, like, sometimes you'll see like an elder, you know, and oh my God, they are so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
not because they have the best lipstick or the cutest hair
Mm-mm.
or the cutest outfit. It is like they are radiating something.
Love. Yeah,
Oh,
I know.
love and
I'm
acceptance.
obsessed with older people. I just because not only for the reasons that you're explaining, but it just also the wisdom of what it means to show up in kindness, in love, having gone through very traumatic, tough experiences, both at, probably macro, national, global levels, and also, their own individual lives. But I think, what you're pinpointing of that momentary
Mhm.
kindness and love. What did it take for you to get to that place of self-love, even in the midst of the bad, dark months, days, years?
Yeah, I always say that self-love is a moment to moment commitment. And
Yeah.
I really mean that because I think people want to think that, it's the downward dog in the yoga class, or it's the green juice, or the $40 spin class, or whatever it might be, or the affirmation, and I think that those are great tools, but that is not self love. And I think the wellness industry in particular has done a great disservice to selling people on the concept that that is self love. Self love is when I wake up in a flare and
Mhm.
I'm in tremendous pain, I am kind to myself. I
Yeah.
call someone or I text a friend that I love and say, I'm having a really bad pain day. Can you make sure that I eat today?
Yeah.
It is moments like that. It's not perpetuating the isolation that I can feel having multiple chronic illnesses. It's being mindful about my finances and my financial health. It's being mindful about toxic relationships.
Mhm.
It is, all of these things. And then a part of it for me, because it resonates with me, but it doesn't for everyone. And I have a feeling it would for you too, is like, curling, like spending an hour or 30 minutes curling my hair, even though there's this rogue curl. I still, you
It's
know, I,
I'm
s-
here
I
for it.
I wanted to do it today,
Yeah.
and I did that for me. I didn't do if I hadn't
It
curled my hair.
wasn't for me. Yeah.
No,
It's
if I
it's for
hadn't
you.
curled my hair, you would have not cared or known
Not
or
the slightest.
right? So I did that for me. And so it's constantly showing up for myself.
Mhm.
I make myself a breakfast and have coffee every
Mhm.
morning because it makes me happy, right?
Yeah.
And on the mornings when I don't do that, no one else cares that I didn't do that. It's only me.
You are like sending the like self-love chill through my bones because I remember when that started to shift for me. And it was after a spiritual journey, an experience for a year alone on another island, like really figuring out what does my life and identity look like outside of my work and achievement and success. And I remember when I started to like go to the flower mart every Saturday morning because I wanted to. And I was doing my makeup and my hair, like not for a dude, like just these little moments of this is for me and not for anyone else. And there was a shift there.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes such a difference. And I think that, when I was really unable to walk without severe pain for about 6 years, my first 5 or 6 years of my 20s. And
Mm.
In those moments, like, it wasn't like an affirmation wasn't going to cut it. Like, like, I'm sorry, what? You want me to just say that, like, I am healthy and alive and I'm
Yeah.
literally like breaking at the seams right
Yeah.
now. Like,
A
this
hundred
is
percent.
complete crap,
100%.
that wasn't sufficient. And so I had to find, and this is, I think, a huge part of the self-love conversation people don't talk about enough, which is the self part. I have to do the work to know thyself. I have to know that,
Mhm.
what does my body feel good eating? What
Mhm.
do I feel energized by? What drains me? Who lights me up? What makes me feel creative? What makes me feel safe?
Mhm.
But no one else. I can look at you. I can look at someone else. I can go on Instagram and follow positive people and feel,
Totally.
inspired by them. That's great. That's a great place to start. But I have to sit with myself. I have to get to know myself. And I think that is really hard when you don't feel good, when you don't
Mhm.
feel safe, whether
Mhm.
it's physical or it's emotional, whatever it might be. It's a hard journey. And so I think the disservice is that people have seen this like very flowery, fluffy type of self love. And I'm like, self love is an asshole. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
it just,
It's a
it's
bitch.
it's a bitch. Like,
Yeah.
it is not cute,
Yeah.
And there's
Totally.
some days when it is, but like, that's not that's not the majority of the
Mhm.
time, especially in the
Mhm.
beginning. Now it flows more. I wake up, I turn the oven on, I know how to make my coffee, I know what I want to do. I listen to some music. I like have all these rituals and they're not a thing for me anymore, right? There's certain things that I still haven't been able to implement, but like the things that I have, it's like, great,
So good.
you got this
Yeah.
down. And it's cute,
Yep.
it's super cute. But there's so many years where that was not the case, where doing those tiny, tiny things were really, really hard. So I think people, need to have a little bit of grace with themselves,
With
that it
themselves.
might be a journey.
Our guests aren't the only ones who get to answer questions that they've never been asked. You can join in on all the fun. Go to womanoncollective.com/worksheet for questions you've never been asked. Because hey, newsflash, you don't need all the right answers. You need all the right questions. That's how you can take the inspiration from this episode and actualize it in your own life. So go on now. Questions for this episode that you've never been asked are waiting for you for free at womanoncollective.com/worksheet. Something that I've loved that I've heard you talk about is your own experience overdosing
Oh yeah.
on the self-love, the self-help. I very much relate to that. I, even at one point in my life said, like, I'm not reading another self-help book. Like, I'm literally not doing it, which
Yeah.
is ironic because my book is very much in the self-help section of the world. Um, but how did you know? And I ask this from a place of someone else might be, listening to this and they're like, they are tripping out on self-help. How do
Yeah.
you know that you've overdosed on
I'm like clearing my throat as I compose myself because there's so many things that I could say about this. How do you know that you've overdosed on self-help? I think what I usually say is to like not beat yourself up with self-help, right? And to me, the answer is in that statement. Like, there was a turning point for me where I went from absorbing all of this info, watching all the videos, listening to all the meditations, reading all the books, like all this stuff, because I wanted to fix myself,
it?
right? I felt
Mhm.
inherently very broken with my health journey and I wanted it to stop. I wanted it to stop. So then I went to, okay, this is how I'm going to make it stop. And what ended up happening was I had no room for my truth. I had no room for my feelings, which was a huge indicator. I think people don't realize, like, in The Secret or when they say affirmations, I was literally like, oh my God, I just thought something negative. Okay, okay. What affirmation can I say to cancel it out? I mean, talk about being in a mental prison.
Right,
Okay. Like,
right.
And that's where I was. And I think a lot of people who beat themselves up with self-help, they're so afraid of their truth, of their pain, of their suffering, that they really they don't give themselves any room to feel any of it.
Yeah.
And you have to feel it in order to get to the other side of it. And I think that is probably the thing I am the most disappointed in when it comes to the wellness industry, because a lot of the gurus out there are talking to people about this, idealized place of peace without being willing to sit in the mud with them, right? Without being willing to be in their pain. They're
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
preying on
Yeah.
this idealized peace that
Yeah.
everybody wants peace, right? So like, sure, I'll pay you
Totally.
$50,000 for a mastermind. I've never done that, just to be clear, but
But
I know a
also,
lot of people who have.
yeah, and to your point, it's kind of how you started some of this conversation around self-love, like even peace and love for yourself. Like you said, it's a moment by moment experience. And I think you really find peace when you're in a negative place and know that, like, if you, to your point, feel your way through it, you'll get back to peace again. Like it's a cycle, not an outcome. And that has been something even in my own life that has allowed me to flow through, the last year of ups and downs, mental challenges, relational challenges, financial challenges, and just knowing like we are in flow. We're gonna find our way back up, or through, or whatever it is, but not if we expect that to be static and an outcome. So
Yeah.
if I'm someone who I'm listening to you, Nitika, and I'm like, yep, okay, I am overdosing. I have no room for my feelings. I'm trying to mantra my way out of everything. There's a book for all of it, a supplement for all of it, a podcast for all of it. And I'm just like, there's no room to explore and reflect. What are the steps to recovering from an overdose on self-help, whether that's been a month, a week, a year, a decade?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is, well, what I had to do was
Yeah.
acknowledge that I wanted more.
Yeah.
I wanted more for myself, and for me, what that looked like was I was like not even allowing myself to go to doctors and like get medication for a short
Mm.
period of time, because I felt like I was failing if I wasn't able to heal myself with my thoughts, which is so messed up. Like, I feel weird even saying that out loud now because that was like 20 years ago, but like that was so real for me at the
I
time when
know.
The Secret came out and all of these people talking about affirmations. I mean, my last name is Chopra, so it's like very off brand for me to like not be into all of this stuff, And I mean, I'm not related to Deepak
But
Chopra,
I hear
but
you.
but
I
you
hear
know,
you.
and so I was just like, "Okay, like, I guess this is where."
Or that everything has meaning, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's a lot of trap that I see. I've seen myself fall into it, that like it
Mhm.
has like the thought has a meaning, the negative thing has a meaning, the illness has a meaning. And it's like, there's stuff there, but a lot of times there's like, it's just not like there's
Yeah.
just shit happening.
Yeah, totally, and I think if 2020 taught us anything, it was
Come on.
probably that,
Yeah.
for sure. I know for me too, because sometimes I'd be like, "Why is this is too much. I don't think I can do that. I
No,
think I need to
no, not going there.
to."
I'm not
Yeah,
attributing meaning to like literally all of
exactly.
this. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So I think that was sort of my first
Yeah.
point, of just being like, okay, I want more, like something, just acknowledgement is always the first step. And then I really think it's about having a support system that can get you through the feeling.
Mhm.
Because, I just know I found a therapist in my late 20s that really held me in unpacking all of my trauma around my health. And I always say she saved me. Like, she really did. I didn't even know that I was allowed to be upset about my health, really, because I just had to deal with it, right? I was just like, what am I going to do? Okay, so I'm going to
Yeah.
be upset all the time. Like, fine, just like get over it, like let's just go. I mean, so having somebody hold up because it was too much for me,
Yeah.
and I think that's probably the number one thing that I hear from people and clients and different people that come to me through social or the community that I'm a part of or whatever. They're always so afraid of like the intensity of their feelings. And they're just like, I'm afraid that if I feel the sadness or if I feel what's on the other side of me trying to say all these affirmations, that I'm never going to stop feeling it, like that it's just going to take
Yeah.
over me. And
Yeah.
I think I used to be like, not understand that so much because I've done some of that work, but now I really get it. Like it's so big. And if we're not equipped to handle it, you really do need to be honest with yourself about that.
Yeah.
And getting that support, whether
Or
it's through group therapy, there's like emotional, like 12-step programs, like Codependence Anonymous is actually like a great program for people that are going through emotional, messiness that they may not understand. And it's free. It's like a great resource people don't know about. And then obviously finding an actual therapist that can work with you one-on-one if you're able to afford that. I think communities like are a great place. You don't want to enter a community where you're going to be dumping your energy. Obviously,
on them. Yeah.
you want to be mindful of that. But there are communities, like the one that you have, the one that I have, that like are supporting people in thriving and
Yeah.
having an outlook that's
Yeah.
going to really help them and not spiritually bypassing at the
Totally.
same time. So there's all of the like building your own emotional ecosystem is sort of like, as people say, self love is a lot about like, oh, taking the green juice or doing the workout class or all of these things. There's also this emotional
Yeah.
ecosystem that you have to build. And
Yeah.
so I think figuring out what those things are and the support that you need. Like one person might be able to do, a community, and that's great. And that's all they need. And they're able
Mhm.
to like get to the other side, and that's perfect for them. I needed like 25 things.
Yeah.
So like,
There's
repeatedly
a
over
lot of
time.
dimensions.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, know thyself, knowing, I think getting that support, that emotional ecosystem set up
Totally.
would be really helpful.
Totally. So in that ecosystem, what I love that you did with your own experience is you created a space, first a physical, now a digital space for other people who are going and experiencing chronic illness, which by the way, is 40% of Americans. So we all know someone, right? We know multiple someones, um, groups of someones. And you chose to take that reality, take your own experience and bring that together. What led you to doing that? Why was that so important for you to do with Chronicon?
Yeah, I think my whole life led me to it, and all
Yeah.
the things that we've talked about. But I think the turning point for me was really around like how alone I felt in my experience of living with these conditions.
Mhm.
And mind you, as I mentioned, I have multiple women in my family that have chronic illnesses. It's not like I didn't know anyone, right? But no one has the conditions that I have. No one had the physical experiences that I have. And so I still felt completely alone.
Mhm.
And I started to sort of do the research after a while because I was like, how come I feel so alone? Like, I don't understand. Am I the literal only one who has psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis? Like, I don't understand what is going on. And then I started to do that research and I saw that there are 133 million Americans that we know of that have a chronic illness. That's not including folks who can't get to the doctor, who are not diagnosed properly. Um, and so I started to I'm not great at math, but I was like, this math doesn't seem to add up. How come there are hundreds of millions of us? And anytime I met someone that had a chronic illness, because I have lots of friends that happen to have them, we all felt alone.
Yeah.
We all felt completely alone. So I became a bit obsessed with like, how do we break that cycle of isolation? Because I know that as a 10-year-old girl, even as a 15-year-old girl, 25-year-old woman, whatever, when I was going through all that stuff, my life would have been changed if
Mhm.
I had felt like there's not something inherently horrible about me that is why I am living in this experience. There's not, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not a horrible person because my body is this challenging. There are lots of people that go through it, and there are lots of people that thrive with it. And there are lots of people that aren't able to thrive, but they still find light,
Mhm.
like there's so many different varieties of this experience. And it would have changed my life. It would
Yeah.
have changed my life. And I know like I'm doing well anyway, but it would have cut, I think, a significant amount of emotional wounding and emotional self doubt. And like, I've had to crawl my way out of low self esteem. That's why I teach self love. You teach what you need to learn, as they say. And
Hey,
I,
woman to that.
yeah, and I always say to people like, please don't look at me thinking that like I know all the things. I'm like, I'm teaching you this because I had to go through the depths of not having any
Having it.
self-love.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think about that, and I think about my journey, and just how much I would have, just that would have really helped me if I had had
Yeah. The
someone
support.
telling me, yeah, someone showing me that like, look at all these beautiful, amazing people who are doing incredible things that are also living with a chronic illness,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
They're living in big ways
Mhm.
that are an and have a chronic illness, not in spite of it, not but like and I think that is something that I've really taken away from your work, is that there are so many of
Mhm.
these ands, and our community and our people who get us, who know how to say the right things, who know how to ask the right questions, which
Yeah.
I want to ask you about, because having those types of people can really help us move forward. When someone has a chronic illness, like we've just talked about the numbers, we've talked about the moment that saw how many people were dealing with this and that you were actually not alone.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of humans out there that are going through this. And then on the other side, there's 60% of people who are not. So for that 60%, for anybody listening who isn't one of those people but knows one, what are
Mhm.
the things that they should not be asking their friend, their acquaintance, their colleague with a chronic illness? And maybe what should they be asking?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question because I think if people talked about this more, there would be a lot less just hurt happening
Yeah.
among people that are really
These little
struggling.
micro hurts.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I think the biggest thing is that, it's similar actually to what people experience when someone that they know is grieving,
Yeah.
right? If you think about it in that context, it's like a lot of times when people are grieving, it feels like we don't want to like step on anything, like we're really afraid. And that's coming from a good place, right? That's coming from a good place. We want to make them feel cared for and loved. And so what ends up happening a lot of times is we're like tiptoeing around them. We're not, excuse me, we're not really going straight to what's happening. We're sort of like pretending like it's not happening type
100%.
thing, right?
Yep.
And I remember a friend who was going through a divorce actually telling me like she went out to dinner with two of her best friends, and they acted like everything was great, to try to like, hi, like
Buoy
everything's
her.
great. Like, how
Yeah.
are you doing? Oh my God, I just saw your post this afternoon and like you look so cute. Okay. So she left the dinner early because literally it was that excruciating for her to sit there.
Mhm.
And what I realized in that moment was just like she just wanted to be acknowledged. That is literally
Yeah.
all we want, is just can you acknowledge me? Can you acknowledge what's going on? And you can also acknowledge, I've never dealt with this before. I don't
Totally.
I don't
I
actually
don't know what to say.
I also think there are certain things that people have said that have been really damaging. Like, I remember when I was really going through my health stuff, I would have some girlfriends, like I would show them my skin or something like that and just be like, I feel like a monster. I feel awful. And they'd just be like, oh my God, girl, I get it. I have this pimple on my face and I just like really, it's so annoying. And I'm
There's
not
like
diminishing your experience, like
with
totally
your pimple, but like, bitch,
not.
I'm diminishing it.
Yeah. I do appreciate that everybody has their own threshold, right? Which I do really acknowledge and honor. But that is actually diminishing my experience. And that's the problem with that, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, that I will never actually forget that moment when I did that, because I remember I was struggling, and it was
Totally.
hard for me to get the courage to tell them that I was struggling. And so then for that to be the response was really challenging. So I would say things like, instead of trying to pretend like you get what they're going through, and then like actually essentially insulting them or diminishing them or even gaslighting them, which I didn't even know what that meant when all of this was going on, but I definitely know that's happened many times. I would say just acknowledge you don't know,
Yeah.
and like asking them questions, that help them feel like you want to understand them, and you want to get closer to them. So things like that.
I think it's an
Yeah.
incredible, incredible wisdom, because I think whether someone is dealing with chronic illness, whether they're dealing with grief, whether they're just going through a challenging time, that is one of the things, because I'm someone who, like, I always want to try and connect and relate. And so what I didn't realize that I was doing, and I would say the majority of people who are doing this are well-intentioned, right? They're not trying to make it about themselves. They're trying to get closer by relating something that's going on with them to you. But the psychology of what happens in that exchange is that you just took the attention away, made it about yourself, versus leaning into your point by asking a question.
Mhm.
Is there a world where questions are too nosy or too
Yes.
much? Okay. How do you know the
Yes.
line as someone who is not living with a chronic illness?
Yeah, I think just making sure like the questions aren't like salacious in
Yeah.
nature. I think you
Yeah.
can kind of
Fair.
feel that energy,
These
like,
are adult filters.
yeah, like I just think you can kind of feel that energy where it starts to be like, oh, like I just want to know, like, what does that feel like? Like, why, and that again is more about me, like, right? I just want to get in there and know,
Yeah.
versus like making it about them, and really shining a light on
I
them,
love
and
that.
like what makes you feel the most cared for. Like, my favorite question is, what do you need right now? That is my favorite question. And I would say, like, most people who are living with a chronic illness or going through trauma, it's like, or grief, like, that's all they want. They just want to be asked that. They want to know that you want to take care of them and help them, even if
Totally.
you don't know how. What do you need right now is one of the most powerful things you can ask someone.
I love that. That is the second time I've heard that in 24 hours. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
really, yeah, yeah. Like, what do you need right now from me?
Yeah.
And it's really good advice. And so I want to know what, speaking of needing things, um, when you are going through this journey, I'm sure there are as you've been going through this journey, I'm sure there have been things that have really lit you up in terms of choices, purchases, people, podcasts, books. So on your hard days, what are the things that you turn to that you like cannot shut up
Well, there are lots of things for
about?
sure. I think the first thing actually that comes to mind, which is nothing to do with chronic illness. But one of the things that gets me through like being an entrepreneur
Yeah.
is the podcast How I Built This, and by Guy Raz. And it really is like entrepreneur therapy for me. And
Hmm.
I feel like the days when I'm just like, what is happening? Or just like feel like so frustrated or just like confused, and I feel alone in that journey.
Yeah.
I feel like I'll go to an episode of that podcast, and it just makes me realize that I'm not alone, you know,
Totally.
and
Well,
it
because we
really helps
always
me.
hear the success stories,
Yeah,
right? And it's
exactly.
part of why I love the conversations that we have here, because
Yeah.
people get up on stages, they get on podcasts, they get on all of the things and talk about the great shit, which is great. Like, we should
Yeah.
celebrate that. But also when you're like, but like, tell me about the deal you did that went wrong, that you thought like was the biggest mistake you've ever made. And when people really get into the nits of how they built it, it is, yeah, you feel
It's
seen.
you really do. You really do. I need it. Like I feel like it's definitely my entrepreneur therapy. And then I also really love my new face steamer. I'm
Mm,
not even
mm.
kidding. I
I
feel
mean,
like,
look at your face, girl.
let me tell you, this steamer is like, I
What
could
do
cry.
you do? Do you
Like,
just like put like, how does it work?
no, so okay, I got the
Do you see what I'm
steamer.
doing? I'm like literally putting my face in a pot. Not
No,
that,
so I got this steamer. I was influenced. I got the
obviously,
steamer,
as we all are.
as we all are at all times. I got the steamer because I saw Jessica Alba using it on
Oh, it
Instagram.
works.
And I was like, well, she's perfect. So I guess like I have to have her steamer, even though I was very aware of the fact that we are not the same people and I do not have her budget for facial, aestheticians. But I was like, whatever, I'm totally going to get the steamer.
Yep.
So it was one of my early quarantine purchases where I was just like, it's happening. And it's from Vanity Planet and they have sales like all the time. And so I think it was like $100, but then it was on sale for like half off. And I was
I'm
like,
here
great,
for this. What
done.
does it do? Does it just make your face feel like
Changes your
plump and
life
soft?
is what it does. It changes your life. Okay. Let me tell you, I've gotten so many people to buy the steamer. It's kind of obnoxious. I should have equity in the
We
company
need to
at this
give you
point.
an affiliate
I
link.
know. But it's just like, is this little like kind of, this kind of shape, almost like an egg shape. And you just use it and it times itself. So it goes on for like 15 minutes and you just sit there with the steam,
So
they
you don't
give you
like prune your face.
yeah, no, it's not like too aggressive and you should only do it like once or twice a week. But it just, I don't know what is in that thing, but it just makes such a difference. I think everyone's skin is obviously different, but for me, steam like really changes my life basically. So I wish I had one for my entire body because I just feel like my body would be so happy.
Mhm.
But I really love that steamer.
Pretty sure that's a sauna. So we can get you one of those.
I know. I need one of those. I need one of
We'll
those.
get you one of those. We'll be right on it. Okay, the steamer and how I built this. Same, but different, but like really here for the variety.
I know it's needed. Yeah. I mean, and yeah, I think like other than that, it's just like, getting through the day with like community, like I'm on Clubhouse now,
Oh, yes, she
like a
is. Yes,
whole thing.
she is.
It's,
I'm still resisting it, but we
oh,
can
I don't
save
blame you.
this for when I'm not. And it's like, LOL. Oh, I'm on. I just like can't. I'm like
Yeah.
another
I
thing.
know. It's like kind of pretty toxic on there, but what I really love about it is that like most things in my life, I have carved out this like tiny corner of it where I've met some really awesome
Yeah.
people and that have the same ethos as me. And so I'm pretty boundaried in general. So I've been pretty good about just being like, nah, not interacting with that
Not part of
nonsense,
that. Yep.
debauchery, and I'm just going to like host my own conversations. I have a self-love club in there and just
Yeah,
like,
you do. Yes, you do.
do my
Well,
own
we'll
thing.
all be signing up for that. So we'll also have to drop your Clubhouse link. Nitika, thank you so much for being here. Before we close, I want to know, what are you batshit grateful for?
Oh my gosh. I am batshit grateful for being able to connect with people on such a real level in the middle of such an intensely weird
Yeah.
time. Like,
Yeah.
I am genuinely so grateful that I could have this conversation with you and I could get to know you better over like recently and just that we can still do that, even though I'm alone in my apartment
Same
for like
girl,
a
me and
year.
Figgy, me and
You
Figgy.
know?
But yeah,
Yeah, me and my sage over here. It's like I'm so grateful for that. I feel like as much as there's been so much going on that's been really hard, like having communities and being able to have connection and just all of that has been so, so incredibly helpful.
yeah, I agree with you. And it's the lesson I have learned in that is, sometimes you have to put the effort in on, all of these rituals and these things that we were used to the community being there when we wanted to opt in to call
Yeah.
it to us a little bit more, especially on the hard days. Well, we are grateful for you and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.